Happy birthday.
And look at this, I see. There's a good notch.
I brought healthy
Look
stuff.
at this.
Healthy
Health,
stuff.
healthy.
I did bring food.
So yeah, we just have to eating moments.
Come on, you can grab some stuff.
I got this.
Okay, it's the same.
Oh,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
All
I
right.
got this.
She wants to
Change.
change.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't think so. I think it's the same. All right. She can want some more books, right?
Yeah.
There's no trash can.
Take a nap. Is that what you-
Yeah, I'm barely staying awake.
So it's gonna be, reach over there and kick you.
Well, I mean, that's.
Yeah, I'm gonna need.
She did. They put me in theater.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
My email wasn't.
They were having homeless,
No, it looks good. The public network.
I know that's-
Yeah, yeah.
but you didn't want to leave
Yeah,
it
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, yeah, that was.
Now they're concerned.
Some of these are.
I have an hour today, or can we have a 20-minute presentation? Maybe. You all. What you want. Yeah.
Make sure we get a potty break between this meeting and the next one for sure.
Oh, my God. Where's your presentation? Okay. I need.
Did I turn it off? Oh.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's the over under tonight. Good night.
No. I'm gonna, one more minute. I don't, I'm, Kelly, I was supposed to be here, but I know that's.
Yeah.
How many?
Yeah, it's gone.
Poor thing, I bet they.
I know, it's a big.
He just didn't want to leave her by herself because she's on all our land, so I think Brenda was babysitting.
I was spring break.
This spring break
Terms.
yes, the terms,
There were no girls.
and they got filled up and they weren't damaged. That's what I was.
And they filled
That's reading.
Had it a long time ago.
So Kelly Owens. Yeah. Okay, the city council plan and zoning joint special meeting Thursday, March 23rd, 2003. 3:02 to be precise. I'm going to call the city council meeting to order. Chairman Shemidas.
What are the planning and zoning commission?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, item 3 is citizen comments and reports. I have one. Ms. Goldsmith, would you like to come to the front? 3 minutes. It's right over there.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Goldsmith. I've been a permanent resident of Port Aransas for almost 40 years. 3 terms on the city council, former chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, also a lawyer. Don't hold it against me. I think that's some of those things are probably why I was named to be on the committee for the comprehensive plan. But I'm here really to talk to you as a citizen about a couple of things that concern me about the plan. I think preservation of the natural environment is the thing that surfaces above everything else in this plan based on all kinds of surveys, citizen comments, and just our general feel of what people here care about. And one thing that I think is amiss in this plan, and I made it known during the comprehensive plan process, is the 67 acres in Charlie's pasture being planned for a proposed additional marina. I think it's a grave mistake. For one thing, it does not seem to be in accordance with the sentiment of the people. If you talk to people about it, a lot of them are surprised about it. Of course, it's been around for a long time, but a lot of those efforts were just to keep the permit going, so we keep our options open. But there were a lot of people during the input meetings on this plan who were surprised that that was being proposed and adamantly were against it. If you look and read at all of that citizen input, you'll see a lot of very strong comments against it. I know I only have 3 minutes, but to me, it seems we sit here in Port Aransas between two other very popular tourist destinations that are similar in some ways. Galveston to the north, South Padre to the south. Galveston is extremely polluted. South Padre is so congested that it hardly resembles a town anymore. And we're sitting somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, and maybe, losing some ground on in both ways. The plans of the port are disturbing, and are existential, I think, to us, not only to our way of life, but our tourist-based economy. And the crowding, the overdevelopment, the lack of planning maybe for development has also really severely impacted our way of life here. And also puts great strain on our natural environment. We're losing natural habitat at a pretty brisk rate. And so as far as the port goes, I would encourage people to be more proactive in the city, not so much of a meek, let's sit, talk and see, because I don't think they're sitting talking with us.
That's where you want to give us a.
Okay.
wrap up?
All right, and then as far as the marina goes, in 2015, there was a study that did not find a broad market demand for it. There was a demand possibly for
Mary,
vessels
we need to wrap up.
larger than 40 feet. And also there was a hydrology study that found it to not be a feasible location. So it's also destroying something iconic to the people of Port Aransas, Charlie's pasture, and for a marina, really problematic location with unknown maintenance costs. And I just think it's a great mistake and should not be.
Thank you, Mary. All right, 2 more speakers. Kathy Fulton. Want to come up, Kathy?
Hi, everybody. I didn't even know we were gonna have a chance to say anything, but I guess all I want to say about the comp plan is there's a lot of things in there I think that are good. I'm really glad a lot of emphasis came through on it for the hopes of preservation of Old Town or portions thereof in different ways that we can maybe get people incentivized to do some preservation and to encourage that. I'm glad to see that there's multiple times in there this is referred to, because there was a lot of citizen input, not just my input, believe me, there was a lot of input. And there are some other good things in there. I'm a little bit concerned, and Joan Holt, I talked to her about this yesterday, that there's references about the drainage plan, but we don't have the drainage plan in the plan. And I think that the most recent study that was done, I think that really needs to be kind of thrown in and incorporated into where people are going to better understand what these drainage options could possibly could be. And just with there's suggestions about how to go about development in there. And in the end, that means this is a cohesive effort by both our P&Z, or planning and zoning, excuse me, and our city council and the city manager and the building department to encourage trying to promote development in a way that doesn't stifle out some of the older communities and some of the communities that do still have the few long-term residents that are still trying to duke it out and tough it out. It'd be nice to try to keep those people sticking around, okay? And that we're not just all, I'm worried we're just becoming a transient 3-day town for more than what's accommodating the residential population. So I would like to say that there's a lot in here that helps support the residential population. I really think that it needs to be given due hard consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. All right, last speaker, Luke Daly.
I'd like to second what Mary Goldsmith said. We really need to preserve our natural resources. People do not need another marina. That's for just rich people that don't spend any time here. We don't need a recreation center. We told you that before. If you can't find enough to do in Port Aransas, there's something wrong. We have great parks, we've got great nature centers, we've got beautiful beaches and wonderful fishing, and we need to enjoy those things. Another thing is we really need to preserve Old Town. You've been told that, you ran on that. You need to stand up and do what you said you were going to do and preserve Old Town rather than back down and let it just go the way of other parts. Finally, the traffic and the things they're talking about, grow, grow, grow. If a town isn't growing, it's dying. I heard that from you. That's not true. A town can die from overgrowth. People won't want to come here if they can't get out to a restaurant and eat, if they can't get around town, if they can't ride a bicycle. And I haven't seen this bicycle pedestrian mobilization plan. The proposed routes on there, I've never seen any work done on that. I'm glad that you put in wide sidewalks. That's what we need. Wide sidewalk, like on 361, like on Avenue C, like on Avenue A. And there's some on Station Street, south of G. So that's what we need. We need to be a people-friendly town, friendly to residents and friendly to tourists. And I think that we need to keep moving in that direction. The people have told you what they want. It's your job to carry that out. Parking problems, short-term rental problems, that's on your watch, and you need to do something about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so item number 4. Item A is a presentation and discussion on the final draft of moving forward with our pass, the Port Aransas 2023 comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Dan Sefco. I was the lead consultant helping the CPAC committee do the heavy lifting in creating a draft plan as the council directed them to do so. I know you've had a busy week, and I thank everybody for their valuable time this afternoon. And what I would like to do is I have a 20 or 25-minute presentation to summarize the plan. I'll start by way of introduction that all this information is on the website. So if you'd like to see the presentation this afternoon, or the plan, or any of the results from the open house on number 3 open house, those are all online for you to review after the meeting this afternoon. So what I wanted to do, the agenda for this afternoon is talk a little bit about the plan development process, how the public review process went, some of the highlights of the plan. In the time I have, I can't really do it all justice, but I'm going to touch on all the points. And then, of course, as I said, if you want the details of these recommendations, they're in the plan. Since we haven't had a chance to review the open house, the 3rd open house, just a few takeaways from that. And there's a separate document on the website that summarize all the comments and the written, as well as any of the maps that have been suggested to be revised in the plan is on the website. And then finally, the next steps. What do we need to do this afternoon? Okay, so to relook at the process here, just to remind everybody that the plan is a 10 or 20-year vision. And it's a guide for decision-making primarily for the staff, Planning and Zoning Commission, and the City Council. And it really frames public policy on future land uses, directs your zoning decisions. It is a basis for your capital improvement planning as well. These are the things that this plan informs. It creates the vision for Port Aransas. Plan's not zoning. It doesn't change anybody's zoning. It's not a rigid policy, and it's not the final answer. We still have all the things going on in Washington, D.C. and Austin that we can't control. But this plan is something that your Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council can control and has a say in. So that's the thing. It's not going to fix all of our problems in the country, but it will do a lot to address things that we need to do here in Port Aransas. So the plan scope is if you look in there, there's a community snapshot which summarizes facts about the community. It does have a vision in there that we worked on several meetings with the CPAC committee. Then also it has two major components, the housing and land use, housing and character, and then as well as transportation and public facilities. Somebody mentioned the park plan. The park plan is going parallel to this. And as it comes along, there could be some references back and forth that way. And then finally, there's an action plan in the back of the things that you need to do. This is the schedule. Without saying, going through each one, we're here. It's been to steal a phrase, it's been a long and winding road, but we spent a lot of time. I'm going to go over some of the key mileposts as we went along, and I'll hit this again at the end. Now, very important, the community process that we had. Am I done?
Your 3 minutes is up.
3 minutes. Okay. I'm ready for a boat ride. Okay. Now, all right. So anyway, just by as I mentioned just a second ago, that the process that we I'm going too fast here. Okay. The CPAC, we had 7 meetings that were throughout the process. We had meetings that are all open to the public. We prepared recommendations. We sent them out. They provided comments back to us. And so we worked very closely with the committee to come up with the draft for your consideration here this afternoon. They were also great ambassadors about spreading the plan, the word about the plan, as you can tell by a lot of the comments. Mention the website. Everything's on the website, so please take a look at that, and you'll see all the information that we're talking about today. Let's go back to the first open house, so to speak. That was back in February of 22. Those that attended remember that was a chilly, willy night. It's the day before we were all running around in shorts in February, and then the next day it was 35 degrees. And so, but it was a great input. We had that at the theater, and that's where we got the initial direction to launch into our various guiding principles and actions. And then back in September 22, we had the second open house where we gave information on preliminary recommendations. And so we had that at the community center and presented our general recommendations. They weren't presented in detail, but just as a way to say, are we on the right track or not? And then finally, we had the third open house. More about that in a minute. The third open house was last month, and that's where we presented all the recommendations that are in the final draft that's online. And so we really have not changed anything within the final plan. We have some suggested cleanups and some things I'll go over at the end here, but there is a separate document and it's available of all the results that were said in that final open house, and I'll summarize those in a little bit here. We thought we had great outreach. We tried to get the word out over the past year or more, and so the newspaper was wonderful. We've got great articles, accurate articles, which I always like. We do this all across the country, and it's always good when we have accurate and fair reporting, which we received here. And so that was really nice. We appreciate that. So a shout out for the paper for accurate. We know that not always they report what you want, but all we can ask for is it's accurate. Okay, so the guiding principles are where we started. We started at this level, and we wanted big picture guidance, reaching across multiple goals, and also begin to set the stage for metrics on how we can begin to measure our success over time. So we had 5 guiding principles. We wanted to enhance the quality of life for the existing residents. And yes, as mentioned by Ms. Goldsmith, the protection of the natural environment is one of the major guiding principles within the plan. Keeping our family-oriented lifestyle and try to ensure responsible tourism. Tourism is a part of way of life here, and we just want to make sure it's occurring in a responsible way. And then support of the local business environment. So those are the guiding principles that were overarching and were able to be blended into all of the goals and actions. So the way this starts out is you have the 2 chapters there on top that I just mentioned, and then you have the goals under each one, and then under those there's actions, and there's some 56 actions, and I'll I won't go over each one, but I'll show you how that sets up here at the end. So that's the basic structure of how this was working. Now, let me start off by talking a little bit about some of the existing conditions here in Port Aransas. The population of Port Aransas was a moving target. The official number is actually like 2904, but if you remember, the official decennial census was taken April 1 of 2020. Now, anybody remembers when that day is? That's when the world shut down. COVID hit, and I'm not sure it's right, but that's what the federal census is. I think some of these other numbers we have in here are more correct, but who knows how that affected your daytime population as we've been referring to it. But anyway, that's something that we just had to deal with. We also looked at existing land use and how the community was composed and the pattern of land use that we have now. We spent a lot of time looking at short-term rentals. There was some discussion about whether they were all in one area or spread out. They were spread out in a lot of places except for probably the R1 zoning, but as you can see, they were all by the dots on the map, spread out amongst the community. So we looked at these factors as we began to form our opinions about what the plan should say. So then we created plan goals, some 14 plan goals. And as you can see, protecting the environment, our local identity, plan for commercial and entertainment uses, creating a positive image for us. Compatibility between tourism and residential life was a very big goal. Promote low impact development strategies. I will say this, the comments about of the earlier public about matching up with the drainage master plan is true. The reason it's just referenced that we need to follow it is because it's not finished yet. So I think once it's finished, it'll become more clear what you need to do. And yes, the drainage master plan is in a way part of your comprehensive plan. We want to effectively manage and leverage our short-term rentals and plan for new quality neighborhoods, support sustainable workforce housing. In the transportation end, we also wanted to make sure that our facilities were supporting future service, also the safety of the community, improved network compatibility. And yes, the hike and bike trails are part of the park plan that's going on parallel to this right now. Support active transportation options, and then plan for roadway design improvements. And I'll touch on these here in a moment. So let's talk about the future land use plan map. It does show the long range plan in there. It describes each one of the land use categories. It informs your zoning and capital improvement decisions. It also has the town square development. One of the things it does have south is the creation of mixed use nodes, and those are located on there among some other items that we'll talk about. The ultimate population, this was important to the CPAC committee because it does change. We have 111 days here that really have a lot of folks visiting the island, and it changes a lot of things for the community. So we had one, the top chart in there. I know it's just hard to read, but you can get online and read it closer. But the little gold boxes there really have what we're talking about. We think the ultimate build out population of the existing full-time year-round population might be closer to 18,000 after you fill up all the land and all the entitlements that have been approved already throughout the community. Of course, we have the seasonal or during the visitation, the 111 days visitation period. It's a lot more, and that swells to. We calculated it several ways. Some came up to around 60,000 or 80,000. But what we used was assign an occupancy to the STR and the seasonal units and use that as a basis to come up with an estimate for you to plan for during the tourism season. On the land use, just a highlight of the recommendations here on the next 3 or so slides is that number one, we do need to develop a natural resource protection plan and align it with the coastal management plan and preserve the nature preserve and so on and so forth. That is already in the plan. It's stated. We wanted to look and see if there's ways that we can provide for our dark skies and ecotourism. Yes, implement the storm management plan and the upcoming drainage master plan. They're forthcoming. They are coming into their final development phases there, but they're not completed yet. We also want to explore funding sources for our natural preservation and restoration of all of our areas, not only the 1,200 acres, but a lot of the areas around Port Aransas. The town square, there's a location for the town square in the report, and what it says though is it needs to be studied on what to do with it. The scope of the study was really beyond us trying. We could spend a lot of time on what to do with the town square. Some people thought it ought to be a parking area, others thought it ought to be a green space. There's still some work to be done there, but it does show a location for it, and it sets the direction of your task ahead of you. The Old Town recommendations, there's a boundary for it. There is actually very few recommendations within the Old Town area. But what the recommendations in the plan say is that those need to be, what you need to do is review the land uses, look at site setback, height requirements, incentivize compatible development, and some other things in there within the Old Town. And so there's a lot to do within there, but that's something that needs to do. So there's really, frankly, it has a boundary, but there's no specific recommendations in terms of ordinance for the Old Town area. We want to continue the planning for the new marina. There was comments. I know Ms. Goldsmith's comments. I recognize those at the beginning. But generally, what the CPAC committee recommended is that we need to identify the 67 acres for a new marina. We stopped short of saying what the ingredients are. We didn't want to build the cake, but we said it ought to have things like retail, entertainment, maybe some affordable housing, of course, boat storage and things like that. But if you adopt the plan, what that says is, yes, this is where the marina is going to be. yes, we have to develop a detailed plan for it. So it does set the location and does state that if you so choose to adopt that within the plan. The other land use and housing and character recommendations revolved around positive image, some gateway treatments and landscaping and art, some things like that. There was even some recommendations about to ensure growth in tourism pays for itself. There's a $12 charge. We stopped short of saying what it ought to be, but there ought to be some increase in camping fees. There was discussion that that's really going to affect lower income folks. And maybe we shouldn't recommend a raise in those fees, but still there's a lot of impact there. And this tourism needs to begin to pay its own way was, I think, a fair sentiment for the committee. Of course, our STRs continue the review of the STR ordinance. You have one now. I believe there is a committee already in place looking at those. But one thing that could be done is consider shared off-street parking on that. As we've been doing the plan, we have been fortunate to stay in STRs. And so we actually got to stay in the STRs a number of times, different ones, as well as hotels, to try to get the full experience of what the issues are. And frankly, the STRs, when there's only a few people in there, the parking's fine. When they get a lot of people in there, parking's problem. So that needs to be looked at. All right. On some other things, there is a recommendation in there for a residential infill overlay district, or RIO as we fondly call it. And it's proposed, the proposed new district north of 1A and island moorings to require consistent development standards, setbacks, limited public permitted uses, and neighborhood quiet zones. Now, in our opinion, there is some coordination that needs to happen. Whatever happens in the Old Town standards probably ought to be coordinated with this broader and larger ROI district. As was mentioned, we are recommending sidewalks in all new neighborhoods, and where possible, when roads are rebuilt, to have roads included in a rebuilding form in your existing neighborhoods. In terms of some of the other things, the Expand the Public Facilities Corporation for Affordable Housing, you already have one successful apartment complex, the Palladium. It's that multi-story white building, if those of you listening at home. And there's a real concern that maybe a lot more public servants and school employees may need some other choices for affordable housing. As you know, the cost of housing is really expanding here and really increasing. We think local partnerships for affordable housing can work. You've already got some of that going, and other cities are doing the same thing. Maybe even consider some property tax relief for longer term rentals and owner occupied units. That might be something that would be good to look at. And also maybe even require larger developments to offer to the city at least first right of refusal for some affordable housing units. And then we have in there a discussion about allowing different housing types that we call the missing middle. You have single family homes and you have apartments. There's a lot of housing types in between that are really unique and really well designed. In terms of the thoroughfare plan, it does show all the functional classifications, updated cross sections in there. And it does show a plan for new city hall and civic center. There was even some suggestions about improvements for high-speed internet, cell service, and evaluate the funding and staffing resources for seasonal public safety. There's a lot of folks that come here during the summertime, and it really places a lot of stress on your EMS and public works. And maybe even some incentives to attract some emergency medical facilities, a place that doesn't have to be a full-fledged hospital, but it could be a minor emergency center that would benefit not only the citizens year-round, but also during the summer. We talked about a resident sticker program. There was mixed input on this, but we still think it's something that you should consider. Having a lot of places do that. I don't know if you've ever been up in the Dallas area on Greenville Avenue. Greenville Avenue grew so much that everybody was parking on the streets, and finally they adopted a resident sticker program up there. It's working pretty good, but a lot of places have done it, and so you might want to look into that. I talked to the police chief a little bit about that, and so there's been some discussion to move that in a direction, at least considering it. We're looking at adding some signalized intersections south. There is one on the very south side. We're trying to make sure the line's right with either the connection to the beach or the Cinnamon Shores. We're looking at right now, but that's really an adjustment that we're looking at. Of course, the right lane at the cutoff, that was a popular recommendation to be included and look at. Off-bike improvements along 361. Of course, there's no on-street bikes and things permitted, but the off-street, you have a wide side, more of that. And then the on-street bike improvements citywide, maybe even a more frequent shuttle route in the central area. One of the popular things, and it's going to take a lot to probably figure out exactly how this worked, was maybe a pedestrian ferry route, or maybe even a golf cart or local car ferry route. There's some room there that we could have maybe a pedestrian ferry to go back and forth. Maybe have a place on the industrial land across the canal there, and maybe look at ways to have a place for parking, and then maybe come over on golf carts and maybe cut down on some of the traffic, just coupled with parking lots and some park and ride concepts. So that's just a brief overview of the recommendations in there. There's more detail on each one. At the end of the plan, you'll look, there's a to-do list that's organized by goal, and there's 56 action items and performance measures tied to those guiding principles that I spoke of earlier. So look those over. Mentioned open house number 3, since we really haven't had a chance to talk about that, but look at that more detailed packet online, but just a few takeaways from that open house. We think what we heard was most comments are supportive of the recommendations. When asked, do they reflect Port Aransas' needs and desires? Most were yes, and some were maybe. Other comments request recommendations that are already in there, and so we think we've addressed a lot of them, like the ferry priority, and maybe reevaluating the STRs. Of course, the goal for the marina was mixed, and so that you can read those comments in there, but that's the general overview. Overall, I think it was a positive. Most people were excited about the plan. So let's talk a little bit about next steps, what we need to do. Next steps. I think what we're suggesting that the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council do tonight is ask us any questions that you'd like to ask. There's members of the steering committee here too, and anything that you would like to ask, and consider any revisions you'd like to tell us to make. And then finally, what we would like from the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council is we're tentatively preparing for a joint public hearing April 20th. Now, this is the public hearing required by law. We can set it whenever we want. We just have to have this. Tonight's not required by law.
And that's the council meeting date. Is there a follow-up council item on that day too?
Yes, we can get into the details of setting that up. It can be a public hearing, and then just like you do a lot of cases, the next item can be consideration, and you can adopt it or you can defer it, whichever you feel. There are some proposed adjustments. I want to thank Ms. Goldsmith. She really gave it the eagle eye. And we do have a few typos in there. We're going to get those corrected. We're going to total up the engagement numbers. There's a lot of minor stuff in there. We still need to get an airport photo. Every time we were here, it was cloudy or raining or something, and we couldn't get a good photo. We do need to make sure we have the most southernmost access road in the right location. And so we're looking at that right now. And then remove the proposed parking lot label by the beach at Lantana. There was that was just, we just need to take that off the map. And we're removing the references to the Old Town Preservation Advisory Board since there is not one now. Anything that comes up with the parks master plan, we might want to reference that in there. And then finally, on one of the recommendations we put in there, look at the citation, the metrics were the citations on the STRs, but we discussed that a more correct way is the complaints and citations on page 100. So we would rewrite that. So those are some of the minor adjustments that we would make before next month, before the public hearing. We didn't want to change them right now because we wanted you all in the public to see what everybody saw on the last open house. All right, so here again, here's where we are. We're on March 23rd, and I know you had a long week, but we need to decide if we're want to go for April 20th. The CPAC has done their job that you've asked of them. And so this is the official handoff to the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council. So that's where we are. So that concludes my presentation, but I'll be glad to answer any questions. Of course, a lot of people in the room were at all these meetings, and they're here to keep me honest. And Mayor, I'm going to turn it back over to you to chair the meeting, and we'll be glad to have any discussion amongst the group that you wish.
Thanks, Dan. Any thoughts or comments? I know it's a lot of information, and obviously the team has done a lot of work over the past year to get to this point. So the goal is not to rework the whole plan for the next year by any means, but if there are things that we want to tweak or change, we can talk about that.
Well, it is a living document,
Yes.
so you could amend it as often as you need to.
I mean, overall, though, Dan, to your point is that the next step is for us to adopt the plan. And then our goal as city council, future city councils, again, 10 to 20-year items possibly, is to work off the plan to make these suggested improvements. And things change, life changes, people change.
Absolutely.
Some of them, all of them may not be done or may
Well,
be done differently.
That's exactly right. It gives you a work plan.
Right.
Doesn't do everything, but it says, okay, here's what it says. All right, now we got to go do that. Some things cost more than others, but it gives you a plan that we think has some work items and a work list. It's like it helps you know where you're going. It's like Yogi Berra of the New York Yankees. He was a famous baseball player. And he always said, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up with someplace else. So that's kind of what we want to do here is we want to try to know where we're going. Not everybody may agree exactly on the course, but those courses can be adjusted over time. But we got to start and we got to have something to begin with. And we think this is a very good start.
Okay, from what I'm hearing and seeing and stuff like that, it looks like there's a lot of consensus on the bulk of the document. The exception being the marina and stuff like that. So can you explain what if there was controversial or what some of the dynamics were around that, the pluses and minuses and stuff like that?
I think that's a fair exaggeration of it because I think even notwithstanding the marina, most people agreed with the content of the plan. I'll say that. But there was mixed feelings about the marina, and the location. So we tried to focus on the plan says this is where the location is. And we stopped short of saying it needs to look like the map. There was a map down the hall here that I'm sure many of y'all seen. That's maybe not what it needs to look like. We just need to say, are we going to plan for this to be here or we're not? And that's really what it was.
Is the controversy around the location of the marina or just the general need for a marina in and of itself?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, there was a location of it that we don't need it and it consumes land in the preservation area. So yes, that's the basic discussion.
Was there a lot of controversy or pushback around the need for any, bid or any place, or was it really focused on this particular location?
We did look at other options, but as we begin to look, there really is no other options. And the places that are over here are getting consumed and getting bought up. That's one of the last areas that are left that a major marina could.
So if there's going to be a marina, it has to kind of be.
Yeah, and it's had lots of previous studies. You can agree with the studies or not, but there's large ships that come through there. It's got enough water, probably too much water, but it's got enough water that it can handle any kind of traffic, boat traffic and things like that. So either we're going to put it there or we're not. And my recommendation and the CPAC's recommendation is let's put it here until somebody can come up. If somebody says there's another place, we can look at another place, but somebody's got to make a decision on this.
So it's either going to be there or not, though. There's no other real options.
I don't have a dog in this hunt and I've looked at it. We've driven all over this island. I don't know where we're going to put it.
No, I appreciate that. I just was trying to understand, because the rest of the plan, there's some tweaks and some minor comments here and there and everything, but there seemed to be a lot of general consensus around everything else. This one seems to be the one outlier position. I don't know. I mean, it's
This person speak to it, but there's a permitting into it as well. If we let the permit go, we never get back.
There's some details like that are out there.
So essentially, the people in this room got to make a decision, right?
If you want to be, not to put too fine a point on that, but yes.
That's fair.
Frankly, I'm just going to tell you, you're going to kick this can down the road another year, 2 years, or 5 years, or we're going to call it and do this. And you got to decide because it's not moving unless we make a decision.
No, right? But
Yeah,
it looks like
right.
In terms of the plan, most of the stuff seemed to be a pretty good consensus document, right? This one seemed to be the one outlier.
I think that's a fair characterization. Yes, sir.
Right. I just want to make sure I understood it.
Yes, sir.
Come on, somebody else got it.
How does the P and Z feel about moving forward to make a decision, accepting the plan with the tweaks or minor tweaks, if there are any? Most of you were, or part of you, half of you at least, were on these committees, correct? So I'm assuming the committee approved the final document or the working document thus far before we got here, right?
Ability to make changes going forward in the future. I mean, it's
Sure.
it's a set of guardrails to follow.
I don't know. I know that we haven't had this document for a real long time, but I know some of you were also on the committee and, spent a lot of time at the meeting. So does council have any feeling one way or the other? I mean, we have been needing to put our new updated comprehensive plan together for quite some time. It was a discussion item right around the time Harvey hit, and that obviously put a big delay in that. And so I think it's way past time and way overdue. And I'm very pleased that we've gotten this far in the process. So I, for one, think that we need to move forward to have those set of guardrails so that we can continue the planning for the city. So
I think while we're not all going to agree on everything in there, I think it's we're heading the general right direction with this plan. So that's just my thoughts.
Well, and even with the land that, I don't know when the city bought this land for the,
1994.
and it
Yeah,
was in hopes that one day we would have our own marina since.
Actually,
we
no,
don't-
when
that wasn't
the
it.
marina didn't come into play, although the original owner had the marina basin, he also owned Channel Vista. So it was a two-phase construction project. Build Channel Vista Phase 1, Phase 2 was the marina. After Channel Vista turned back over to the bank, someone brought it to the city's attention, said, hey, there's this great plot of land. I know the city wanted to build a 9-hole golf course. And so the city purchased it in 94. Then it sat for about 3 years. And then you can start seeing documentation in about 97 and 98 when someone said, hey, the best thing is use that marina permit. So at the 1998 visioning plan, that is the last official visioning plan ever adopted by council. It is in that document as a marina. So that's where, so it wasn't purchased for the marina, but when they purchased it, they got that core permit. So so since then we've done, the core permit's good for 5 years. We're on our 5th core permit. It's a renewal, but the last one, basically about 10 years ago, 2 permits ago, the Corps said, wait a second, we're not just going to do this through a letter. They used to just write us a letter. Here's another 5 years. Here's another 5 years. In around 2010, they said, well, we're going to make you do a new wetland delineation. And then this past revision that we started in 2018, they were like, we're going to make you do a brand new permit. So basically we did a brand new full-blown core permit this last go round. So it's gotten more and more intense, but it is there, so you got another 5 years. You don't have to make a decision on it, but my recommendation is that this is kind of a generational thing. We are approaching 100% capacity at the marina. So what I recommend to people is look at the next generation. Look at our kids and the 25-year-old people that are in the marina business. They are going to need a home in 15 years. And so I would strongly recommend, do not be the people that do their future in. Let them decide it. Keep this thing active, keep it in this document, and let them decide in 5 years, 10 years. I think it's the younger generation's future that this thing should be in their hand. And I think killing this you are not doing your fiducial responsibility as a council member if you kill this project. This is a massive economic engine for the future generations of Port Aransas, and you can't just simply say, oh, the 1,500 acre nature reserve needs another 69 acres. I think that's just not the correct vision.
Question about that, which I've never clarified. David, could
Yeah.
you tell me super quick, what is the permit? I know what the core permit does and well aware
Yeah.
of the core permits. But if you weren't, just out of curiosity, if you were not to do a marina, and you had a core permit, would the core permit be needed to do, say, residential development there? Or-
No,
Okay, so it is for doing the dredge.
it is for that actual picture. It is that marina. It's drawn just like it in the core permit.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Mary was on city council when they bought that property. So, yes,
As the city limited liveaboard in the existing city limit.
Yes, I believe we just raised it to, I think we went to 20. Yes, we were at
14.
13.
14.
Yeah.
And that would make a big difference in public approval. If the city were more, more accepting of liveaboard. Because that is also part of the housing issue. That when a lot of people had to leave the marina, they lost their housing. So I know liveaboard can be a problem and not maintained, but we set standards, and that would be more acceptable to many members of the community if it wasn't just for non-resident people.
No, I think
Well,
Yeah. it would be fair to have another percentage of liveaboards, you know?
And again, this document is not going to put in all the descriptive measures of what the marina will be. So, and that's a great point, Luke. And I think that, but that's part of the future planning, right? And so I think Dave said it very eloquently. Our job is to decide how we keep moving forward and not to give up the opportunities for the future. And so I think the marina permit is a big part of the plan, and how that gets developed and what it looks like is for future generations to decide.
So all we really need is to preserve the permit.
You do, but you can't just, to his point, keep saying, well, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. At some point, you're going to have to take some action. Future councils, whoever it is, will have to take action. And so, I mean, obviously, we have enough on our plate right now that we're not going to do that next week or next year. But in the future, we'll have to do something in order for them to continue to renew the permit.
Really, all this does is preserve the permit and the site.
But it also, it does help you, like if you were out, if you ever went out for federal grants or state grants, you know, boating infrastructure grants, you know, the first thing they're going to ask you is, have you planned for this marina that you want to submit for this $5 million application? And they're going to want proof that it is in your long range planning documentation. So if it's in the comp plan, you have that backup to present. If you ever go out for grants, you're going to say, here it is. Our citizens and our city council have approved this proposed marina. It's in our long range planning, and that goes a long way when you're going after federal grants.
Which is the same thing for thoroughfare plans and all the other things that are living, working in this document. We've said that, or we've had that been told us before on many items. Well, what's in your comp plan? So all the parts of the plan make it better for
Right.
chances.
TxDOT's going to want to
Yeah.
see our road sections. Like I said, marina, beach,
Public housing,
everything's in here. I mean,
opportunities, all
yeah.
those things. Yeah,
There's a lot of good things in this.
sure there is. Yeah.
It's a consensus document, like Tim said, it may not be, you know, it certainly is a nice, I think there's a lot of good stuff you can get behind on it, conceptual stuff, so I think people did an outstanding job. My only point was that just, yeah, one element seemed to be the most controversial stuff, right? But the others, I mean, it's a control, I think it's a great road, yeah, for the city, I really worked hard.
Was the controversy to kill the marina plan? Is that the problem that was coming out, or the non-consensus was to just get
Not
rid
have
of,
the, I think that's
kill the
probably it
marina,
in a
the future
nutshell,
marina?
is not have the, we don't need the marina. We don't need it.
And our marina is at close to what percentage full?
Well, that's
Well,
because Island Orange won't get
Well,
the
no.
damn
Okay,
channel open enough because they're sitting almost empty out there.
but we're a
And then-
government and that's
Sure,
a business.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
if we're at almost 100%, does economies of scale and does cost and economics come into play that the prices is going to currently go out, up and up and up to have a slip in our marina? Supply and demand, is that going to kick in? If you're at 100%,
We just raised the marina rates, what,
I
a
know,
couple months ago, so.
but
They're still real reasonable.
Yeah,
right. So I think we have to think about that for the future before, you know, a slip is $2,000 a month because there's somebody that wants to bring their big boat in and have it.
Yeah. And I think the city manager is right. We do these plans on a lot of different things. I mean, we build dams and reservoirs and all kinds of stuff. And what the federal government likes to do is give money, but what they don't like to do is resolve consensus. TxDOT, any of the federal agencies, they don't want to resolve that. They're going to go to whatever the council adopts. Whatever this council adopts is what they'll go by. And the only reason they really do that is because in the past, if they start talking to and get different input, they can't really find what the true consensus is in the community. Consensus means not everybody agrees, but somebody's got to vote on the plan, and this gets it in the plan, gets a location, preserves that, and by de facto preserve that permit. And then if somebody else wants to take this out of the plan 10 or 5 years from now, that's their prerogative. But I think it would be not good to preserve this option for the citizens and businesses of Port Aransas.
And what percentage of your CPAC members, community members that you've heard from, but were against the marina? Or do you have more,
Well,
more for or against?
Well, you're gonna have, the people that were there are gonna have to keep me honest on this, but on the CPAC committee, I think there was 2 that were against the marina. And the rest of the members were for it. Now, if that's wrong, somebody can tell me that I missed it, but that's what I remember.
2 out of how many?
I forget how many there were, 15, there were
15, yeah.
Yeah.
15 members.
So in other words, you could say a minority of the people were against the marina.
Yes, that's fair, fair comment.
It's looking to me like this is a done deal. The marina is coming, that's what it looks like.
Well, this document doesn't say that. All this document says is it reiterates what the past 30, well, how many years is this marina permit? 94, it's almost 30 years old.
Yeah.
Is that at least keep the permit alive? I mean, yeah.
Right now, I hear that you need to start getting ready to build a marina. What it sounds like.
I mean, I don't think.
We got a new.
Kinda sounds
permit.
like
We got
that.
A new permit, right?
Yeah, we have a new 5-year
And it
permit.
made it for how many years?
Excuse me?
It made it for how many years got renewed?
It's been renewed, I think, what's
So this wasn't a
it's
renewal. This was
28 years
brand new.
divided by 5. It's about, I don't know if it's the 5th or 6th, I'm not sure.
This is brand new.
It's quite a.
The new one,
Well, the new one.
the new one's got 5 years on
Okay,
it.
So every time the
But-
permit comes up, we
No,
go through.
so we get
this
to renew,
again, so-
and they have in the past.
Yeah.
What this does, though, it says, this is the site. This is the adopted site in our comprehensive plan. This is what we're gonna do. So somewhere along the line, you gotta quit arguing about the location and say, this
Right.
is our site. Otherwise, you're gonna continue to argue about the location for 15 years. But this says where the site is. It doesn't build it. It's like building a cake. We know that this is gonna be a cake as opposed to a salad, but we don't know what kind of cake it is. Yes, once we decide this is our location, then you can move forward with more detailed studies that involve engineering, site design, and all kinds of other input.
We're not arguing about
Right, you're not arguing about whether this is the right site.
Right.
Now, maybe that's always going to be there, but this, by adopting the plan, that's what you've done is set the site.
And remember that this is the city's comprehensive plan of what to do with the city's assets. We're not trying to tell Cinnamon Shore or any landowner, south of here, we've got a big plan for what you have going on. I mean, yeah, we have plans to preserve and promote and do development the right way, but we've looked at all of our city assets and what is the plan for those assets? And that's been the perspective plan for this particular piece for 30 years.
I don't,
And
I don't see a problem with that.
Keep going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at it. I mean, it's been 25, 30 years and it's yet to happen. I mean, unfortunate, depending on what side of the fence you're on. I mean, we may not, some of us may agree with it, some of us may not agree with it, but I
We're a
mean,
day closer to building a marina than we were in 1994.
Exactly.
So it can,
so I
nobody's
mean, I
against.
think it's, I mean, I think the plan needs to move forward.
And we
what
have
we
to
need to
keep it in
do.
there.
Nobody's ever against keeping the permit. Everybody's
Right.
always said we want to keep the permit.
Okay, all right.
So was this something
It
that,
may be
what do we need?
Do you guys, do both groups vote to push it to the 20th for the public hearing?
Yeah.
Or is it, how do you do that? Is it general consensus? Is it?
I think all we need to do is consensus, but we would like to make sure that you have to remember, the public hearing doesn't obligate us to do anything but have the public hearing.
I know. The question is how do you pull this off? Is it a recommendation by P and Z to council and then council votes to go to the 20th?
Yes, I think what the protocol.
Still have a point.
Well, I think the protocol here would be that the Planning and Zoning Commission needs, frankly, the only vote that we really need is to move forward. Is that, yes, we want to move forward and the plan is a public review draft ready for public hearing. That's all we need you to tell us. And then the council needs to tell us the same thing if they feel it's ready. That's all we need to do. We've already acknowledged that we're making some adjustments. We're fixing some typos. And so those will be ready at the time of public hearing, but we've listed you can see the changes are rather minor. And so what we're telling you is we think it's ready to go to the public and let the public have the public hearing. We have to have one by law. That's what the state law says. So that would be it. Now, at that public hearing, I can work with the city manager and we can set it up to where the Planning and Zoning Commission could make a recommendation to the council that we can have the public hearing and then they could take a break and you could deliberate whatever changes you want to recommend and recommend it to the council. The council can receive it, come back, convene, and then they can make a decision and adopt it or not. And so we could set it up that way on the agenda and do it on the 20th. But if you don't want to, there's other ways to do it too.
We can just recommend. Council.
Yes, sir. That's your role. That's your job. Yes, sir. That's correct. No, we want you to be there at public hearing because it's the right way to do it. That way you hear the same testimony as the council.
We can recommend.
And then after that, you make your recommendation. Whatever recommendation you feel appropriate.
So as far as today goes, under standard Robert's rules, we would be recommending as a P and Z that we move forward to the public hearing with the document as presented.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with that, can I invite a motion?
Well, I had a question about something else. I mean, is that all we were talking about is the marina or?
We're gonna run it through you and then it's all yours.
Okay,
Do you have a question about something else in the plan?
yeah.
Okay,
Well, you got a motion did you have a second?
I was in the process.
All right, let's let them get out of the way.
Okay.
Then it'll come to you guys.
I'll make the motion to approve the comprehensive plan as drafted with minor changes that you addressed and then prepare for the public hearing time.
Mike Deanna's motion to approve, Nick Loretta second.
We're just gonna call roll from
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mike Dayon,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Nick Lorette,
Yes.
Barney Barley,
No.
Marty Phelan, and Todd Smiley.
Yes.
Okay. We have their recommendation to hold the public hearing. Now, were there other questions?
Oh, I did. I had
to
it
address.
when you were talking about the town square or whatever. So it was adopted in the parks plan also?
Yeah, Colleen presented that.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I wasn't
It wasn't
sure,
this.
but we weren't sure what it said. We haven't seen a copy of that.
Okay.
So we don't know. It's in there as a town square, but is it parking or is it?
And it was
public
drawn
open
up as a
space,
park.
Plaza? All we're saying is we got the location in the plan.
It was drawn up as a park with parking in the
Yeah.
back.
Okay, well,
It was half and half.
that's great.
Okay.
Added to this?
That's
Or-
consistent with what
okay.
we have in there. We just say this is the
Okay.
location.
Okay,
It's just the location.
That makes
that
sense?
was all my question.
Yes, sir. Okay. Good question.
anybody else have any other questions?
So there was question about having public transportation and the RTA, and we've talked with that this plan has about expanding it. Do we leave it in the plan that, yes, we want to expand it?
Yeah, whatever happened with RT, we never talked about it again.
Well, I mean, I think this is just a general, I mean, just like anything, a plan can be changed. So if the council decides in this summer to abandon RTA, you know.
Can do that.
So I mean, I think it's still this is just strictly my opinion, it needs to remain in the plan to move forward, and then this council or another council can choose to, you know,
Okay.
not do it or do it. That's just, I mean, that's just my.
I agree.
Okay.
I'd like to go ahead and present a motion.
Okay,
I'd like to motion to approve.
I'll second.
all right, there's a motion and a second. Fran, you call the roll?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers,
Yes.
Councilmember Krueger,
Yes.
Mayor Tim
Yes.
Councilmember Park,
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carried.
So Mayor and City Council, at your direction, will prepare for a public hearing on the 20th. And work with the date, or excuse me, not the date, but the time, how you want to do it. But it would be a similar setup like this
Okay.
that we'd have, and they both convene. The public hearing would be open simultaneously where they hear what you hear. They close it, they deliberate, make a recommendation, and then you deliberate.
Okay,
Well, we want to thank you, and all the members of the CPAC committee. We thank the council for entrusting us on this important project, and it was great to work with everybody. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun working here. We ate at some great restaurants. And we only had one golf cart wreck, but it's a wonderful community. We had a great time, and we just want to say publicly that it was a real honor to be able to work with everybody on this. Nicole has been invaluable. David's busy all the time, but Nicole has been on the spot with anything that we needed. Huh? But
She has
she's
no
been on-
children
but
and no life,
But
right?
just a thanks to your staff, and to the council and P and Z and CPAC committee. That's all I've got,
Thank you,
Mayor.
Dan.
thank you very much, Dan. We appreciate everyone's efforts. And again, I do appreciate the CPAC and the comp plan committee. Because it's a lot of hard work, a lot of hours, and the public for their input at all the meetings as well.
Nice,
It's
nice
important.
group effort.
Important part of planning for the future. All right. We're adjourned.
Are you guys